already covered the greatest of the great in an earlier video, so now let's take a dive into the baddest of the bad. I'm Ellie for Who Culture, and these are the 20 worst moments in modern Doctor Who. Number 20. Lazarus's transformation, the Lazarus Experiment. Criticising mid-2000s CGI from a 2025 perspective can often seem a little unfair, and so for the most part I can ignore and accept it. But the transformation of Professor Lazarus in the Lazarus Experiment was perhaps a little too ambitious for the resources available at the time. The intention was to create a terrifying hybrid scorpion-human monster, but instead the creature is laughable in the fact that the head looks completely out of place on top of the skeletal scorpion body. Poor Mark Gatiss. What did they do to you? The sad part is that the actual concept of this episode in Lazarus desiring youth and longevity is a very interesting one. But the moment the monster is revealed, all credibility is lost, and it struggles to regain it for the rest of the runtime. Let's hope for a special edition remaster one day. Number 19. A family conversation, resolution. What's frustrating about this particular moment is that writer Chris Chibnall actually makes a really funny joke at first, only to beat you over the head with it and completely kill that momentum. Ryan's overly dramatic line, "What a monster," in response to the reconnaissance scout Daleks shutting down all of the UK's internet on New Year's Day works really well, only for the gag to drag on and on and on in the form of a Family Guy-esque cutaway scene in which a horrified mother proclaims, "I suppose we'll have to have a conversation," in front of her equally horrified kids. The "how do you do fellow kids" energy is off the charts with this one, and it feels terribly misplaced during a part of the episode where the stakes are ramping up and we're hurtling towards the climax. You had your cake, Chibnall, why did you have to try and eat it too? Number 18, an unshacktacular ending, the power of 3. It's an open secret why the closing scenes of Steven Berkoff in The Power of Three are so poorly put together. The actor was allegedly so difficult to work with that an alternate resolution to the plot had to be scrambled together at the last minute, and that resolution left a lot to be desired. The Shakri, played by Berkoff, suddenly disappears, the Doctor waves his sonic a bit, everyone looks slightly concerned, they jump through a hole, and it ends. What just happened? And why did it happen? Throw in some blatantly obvious close-up inserts of Matt Smith and Karen Gillan against a green screen, and the scene is so chaotic that it's hard to follow exactly what you're watching. We also never actually see any of the cubes defibrillate anyone back to life. There's no tension, no build-up. Nothing. It all just amounts to the Doctor waving his sonic at a sci-fi TV screen and saving the day. Now, to be fair, that's roughly 93% of Doctor Who resolutions, but this one was clunkier than most. Number 17. Male-presenting Time Lord, the Star Beast. The Star Beast arrived with enormous levels of hype back in 2023, though it ended on a bit of a weird note, with Rose and Donna's lines to the Doctor that he doesn't understand because he's no longer a male-presenting Time Lord. There's nothing wrong with wanting to empower a particular group of people, but to put another group of people down in the process feels quite reductive, and quite unlike Doctor Who itself. But what really makes this a misjudged moment is the fact that the Doctor was literally a woman literally several hours ago, and as a result, the very important gender-fluid aspect of the character feels like it's being conveniently ignored, at best. Moreover, the Doctor is an ancient alien from a society that has long since moved beyond our petty human obsession with gender, to quote the 12th Doctor. So of course they would understand, regardless of what form they're currently taking. It's not really clear what Russell T Davies was trying to say or do here, and it's a strange moment in an episode that otherwise made important strides with trans representation in Doctor Who. Number 16. Rory's bathroom accident, the Rebel Flesh. Doctor Who and dodgy CGI. Name a more iconic duo. While there's a lot of great creepy body horror in Series 6 The Rebel Flesh and The Almost People, the scene in Part 1 where Jennifer channels her inner Mr. Fantastic to give Rory the fright of his life in the bathroom is more laughable than anything else. Just let us live! There's a distracting contrast throughout the story between the excellent practical effects work of the Flesh doppelgangers' normal humanoid forms and some of the over-egged CGI monstrosities they turn into. Bonus points in this category for the big hulking four-legged Jennifer beast at the end of The Almost People, but it's her earlier toilet encounter with Rory that truly takes the rubbish biscuit. Number 15. Martha marries Mickey? The End of Time Part 2. Poor Martha. She spent the entirety of Series 3 playing second fiddle to Rose in the eyes of the Doctor, discovered her self-worth and removed herself from an unrequited love situation, only to be written into a marriage with none other than Rose's rejected ex, Mickey, seemingly for no other reason than they were two of the spare characters from RTD1, and he wanted to cram them both into the End of Time Part 2's already overly self-indulgent farewell tour. Martha was in a happy relationship with Tom Milligan, for crying out loud. He was a great guy! And then you go and lump her with Mickey the idiot for literally no reason. Did those two characters ever share a single line of dialogue together? I mean, come on, Russell. You're making this list way too easy. Number 14. Dodgy CGI baby mouths, space babies. While I can let the mid-2000s CGI issue slide, the same cannot be said for an episode that released in 2024. Space Babies could have been a stronger episode if it wasn't for the overly distracting CGI mouth movements of the talking babies. This very much feels like an example of less is more. The babies could and should have spoken through a toy, or even telepathically. Much less work in post-production, not to mention cheaper. And yet, by adding the extra detail of moving mouths, the whole concept fell flat and became more of a gimmick than a clever use of VFX. Not exactly a great note to start your bold new Doctor Who era out on. Number 13. The systems aren't the problem. Kerblam. Kerblam is one of the strongest episodes in Jodie Whittaker's first year as the 13th Doctor. But oh boy does it fumble the bag at the end. Given the current AI boom, the story almost feels ahead of its time in its warnings about 90% of jobs being overtaken by machines. They want us to be grateful that 10% of people get to work, bemuses maintenance worker Charlie in one of many examples of the episode sticking up for the working man and woman. That is until writer Pete McTighe decides to pivot and give two big thumbs up to the blood-sucking corporation by having the Doctor declare the systems aren't the problem, before doing very little to prevent Charlie from being blown to smithereens. McTighe either didn't understand his own message, or worse, willfully ignored it. For the Doctor to not acknowledge that Kerblam exploiting its workers and treating them like dirt is the problem is just bad writing and very un-Doctor-like, resulting in a clunky and muddled end to the episode. Number 12. Farting Slitheen, Aliens of London. The idea of ugly green aliens with uncontrollable flatulence who disguise themselves as members of Parliament sounds like something a child would submit to the show. But alas, this gem came from the mind of Russell T Davies. Aliens of London is full of many great moments, including a spaceship crashing into Big Ben, a crossover from what would eventually become Torchwood, Harriet Jones's debut, Rose returning home after she was believed abducted, and even good old Space Pig. But the Slitheen letting rip every 2 seconds is not one of its strong suits. In particular, the scene where a bemused General Asquith encounters a trio of piping public servants inside a room in Downing Street. We get the metaphor, Russell, but that doesn't make it clever or insightful. While many areas of that original 2005 series have aged very well indeed, this certainly isn't one of them. Number 11. Sea Devil Sword Fight, Legend of the Sea Devils. The climax of Legend of the Sea Devils is a confusing mess, and basically the whole episode could go on this list. But if I had to pick one moment, it's the thrilling sword fight that happens near the end. And yes, thrilling is in air quotes. Choppily edited, badly directed, and confusing as hell, it's a neat summation of the episode itself, which to be fair was a bit of a rush job as we were coming out of the pandemic, which no doubt impacted production. Oh, and it was also written in basically 3 days, which I mean, you can kinda tell. This should have been a grand epic return for the Sea Devils after decades away, and this sequence should have been awesome, but it wasn't. And what makes it extra rubbish is the painfully obvious ADR'd line from the Doctor, "Don't let the swords touch your skin." Really? Gee, thanks for that, Doc. I was totally gonna let them whack me before you said something. Frankly, it's a relief when Ji-hun finishes off that Sea Devil on the floor, as it meant we didn't have to watch any more of this scene, and the episode itself was over quicker. Number 10. Toilet-trained gorilla, The God Complex. The God Complex is a genuinely unsettling episode of Doctor Who about a hotel with rooms containing everyone's darkest fears. It co-stars comedian David Walliams, whose room is presumably full of outdated Little Britain sketches. We see laughing puppets, sad clowns, weeping angels, and even overly stern parents, all representing the fears of the story's core cast. Most of these fears are effectively portrayed, but one that doesn't fare so well is this laughable gorilla which attacks Lucy Hayward during the pre-title sequence. Now sure, the BBC BBC didn't have the budget to call in Andy Serkis for a bit of mocap, but was this thing supposed to look so fake? Either way, this bizarre sight completely destroys the tension of the scene, as does the unusual choice to add a toilet flushing sound effect as the gorilla lumbers out of the bathroom. So is Lucy scared of gorillas in general, or gorillas in toilets? Who trained that gorilla to use an indoor toilet? Why did it take the toilet paper out of the bathroom? We could go on, but let's just summarise by saying it's cringy and I don't like it. Number 9. Random girl appears in a bush in the forest of the night. In the Forest of the Night is certainly an episode of Doctor Who. It's actually a pretty great premise for a Whoniverse story, but it's squandered under a mess of bad child acting and a dull plot that basically sees our characters walking in the woods for 40 minutes. It then ends on a big emotional moment that was aiming for Pixar but lands somewhere closer to the Sci-Fi Channel, as kid protagonist Maeve is reunited with her sister. Hang on, what even was her name again? Hold on 1 second, I need to Google this. Annabelle! Ah yes, Annabelle, that very important and memorable Doctor Who character. By the time you get to the end of the episode, you'll almost certainly have forgotten why this final scene is relevant, and that's if you cared enough to remember in the first place. Bonus points for the hilarious sight of Annabelle just crouching in a bush for no reason. At least we got a laugh out of it. Number 8. Thumb-sucking, Orphan 55. Honestly, the whole of Orphan 55 could have been on this list, but for the sake of everyone's health, we've limited our selections to just 2 moments from the episode. While everyone else is running around saving the day after things kick off at Tranquility Spa, Ryan is hiding under a table, sucking his thumb, which apparently stops hallucinations brought on by the hopper virus. Okay then. As luck would have it, he meets fellow thumbsucker Bella, and the two bond over the course of the episode. Ryan is ultimately forced to leave Bella behind after she chooses to stay with her estranged mother and fight off the dregs, which could have been a tender goodbye, had Bella not decided to signal it by shoving her thumb in her mouth. It's a laughable attempt at forcing a meaningful emotional moment with some dramatic music and lingering close-ups. These characters have no real chemistry, and they both just stood there sucking their thumbs like a pair of babies during the big action climax. All it's missing is for someone to yell, "Benny!" in the background, and the Razzies would be flowing in. Number 7. Wish Upon a Lamppost, Empire of Death. When we first met Ruby Sunday in the church on Ruby Road, we're told that she was named after the road on which she was abandoned as a baby. And at the end of Empire of Death, it's revealed that Ruby's mother chose the name by pointing at a street sign that magically appears before our very eyes at the end of the episode. Literally. It literally just appears out of nothing. Confusingly, Ruby's mother doesn't point at anything in the church on Ruby Road, she just walks off into the night. The pointing only starts in Space Babies, where it's framed as a portent of something sinister, which it isn't. Factor in that both the sign and the pole it's attached to don't even exist in the church on Ruby Road, and it's a plot development of head-scratchingly baffling proportions. It gets even worse with Russell T Davis's recent reveal that Louise wished the lamppost into existence, which reeks of a guy just making nonsense up after the fact and claiming it was the plan all along. All we can say is it's a good job she didn't leave Ruby on Butthole Lane, which, before you ask, is a real street in England. Look, there it is, right there on Google Maps. Number 6. Amy kisses 11, Flesh and Stone. The Doctor has had his fair share of kisses in the modern era, but one of the most uncomfortable moments comes at the end of Flesh and Stone when Amy pounces on 11. Firstly, Amy just spent 2 episodes watching the Doctor and River flirting to high heaven, and even deduced that River is his wife. So to then make a move on him seems like a major violation of the girl code, and very messy when we realise that River is her daughter. But even more egregious is the fact that Amy is literally set to marry Rory in the morning. The entire basis of their relationship is that Rory always feels second best compared to the Doctor, and yet Amy always chooses him. But this moment throws that entire notion out the window and suggests that Rory has good reason to feel uncertain. Obviously, the writers needed a way to get Rory into the TARDIS team, but this felt like the wrong choice for Amy's character. Wouldn't it have been more poignant for her to have opened up to her imaginary friend about her fears, and he then offered a way to help alleviate those worries? This just made Amy seem shallow and careless. And don't even get me started on how chill Rory seems to be about the whole thing in the next episode. He doesn't even ask her about it. Number 5. Chocolate, The Vanquishers. If you told someone in 2020 that one of the most divisive Doctor Who moments of the next few years would be a Sontaran addicted to chocolate, then you know what? They'd probably believe you. This is Doctor Who, and crazy stuff does happen. With the potato heads having finally conquered our feeble little rock, they start to get a taste of human culture, which leads to one particular Sontaran developing an insatiable appetite for our sweet, delicious chocolate. He stuffs it down his gullet like an excited kid on Christmas morning, before proclaiming, "Chocolate!" with a crazy sugar-induced look in his eyes. It's quite gross, actually, but also weirdly mesmerising. Chris Chibnall was initially praised for balancing the comedic and serious aspects of the Sontarans better than in the Moffat era, where they were 100% comedic relief. But then along came a couple of Mars bars to completely destroy all that good work. We don't remember any of the great Sontaran scenes in Flux anymore. All we remember is chocolate! Now, if you'll excuse me, I'm off to scoff some Maltesers before the next entry. Number 4, The Slab Who Loved Me, Love and Monsters. Love and Monsters is often labelled as the worst episode of Series 2. And while I might disagree with that statement, I can absolutely agree that it includes one of the worst moments in the entirety of modern Doctor Who. We spend the whole episode waiting for Elton to pluck up the courage to admit his feelings to Ursula, only for her to end up being absorbed by the Absorbaloff before their relationship can blossom. Or so we thought. The ending vlog reveals that the Doctor managed to sort of save Ursula as a strange pavement face. A weird but happy ending then. That is until Elton reveals that they've even got a bit of a love life, leaving the older viewers with some truly horrific mental images and a lot of logistical questions. Did we really need to know about their love life? No. But as ever, Russell T Davies just couldn't help himself. No doubt he was absolutely hooting while his keyboard typed these cursed words into the script. Number 3, Plastic Mickey, Rose. It's sort of a miracle that Rose was as successful in launching New Who as it was when you consider that it contains one of the worst moments in the modern era. Again, we can ignore the of-the-time CGI, but what we can't ignore is Plastic Mickey. His slapstick behaviour is pretty cringy and so on the nose that it really doesn't make sense that Rose doesn't notice it immediately. I mean, his reckless driving alone should have had alarm bells ringing. Some might argue that Rose being oblivious to it was meant to highlight her obsession with the Doctor and missing what's right in front of her. But it was a stretch too silly for me to believe that she wouldn't have gone, "Why are you being so weird?" And don't even get me started on pizza, or that rubbish wheelie bin, pun intended. Number 2, Benny! Orphan 55. Good lord, where do I even start with this one? Within one of the worst Doctor Who episodes ever made, we also have one of its cringiest moments for good measure, as poor sweet Vilma repeatedly cries out for her husband, Benny, after he's taken by the dregs. It's hard to know whether the acting or the writing is at fault, but practically every single time Vilma speaks, it's utterly laughable, clearly aiming for heartwarming, but missing in spectacular fashion. The worst moment is Vilma and Benny's interaction inside the truck, where Benny's disembodied voice politely asks that he be put out of his misery rather than be left to the dregs. Despite the shell-shocked faces on the rest of the cast, it's just funny. On the plus side, Benny is now a truly iconic character in Doctor Who history, but not for the right reasons. Number 1, the Absorbaloff, Love and Monsters. Love and Monsters is so bad that it holds the dubious honour of being given a second entry in this list. While the rest of the episode is actually pretty sweet and an interesting story to tell, it all goes down the toilet in the final 15 minutes. Every single second that Peter Kay is on screen as the Absorbaloff is just bad. Bad. And not good bad either. The kind of bad that gives Doctor Who a bad reputation. The kind of bad that wouldn't feel out of place in a comedy sketch. This alien may have been designed by a child, but that doesn't excuse the woeful direction and performance that brought it to life. And in fact, the world would be a better place had it never been brought to life at all. Peter Kay has since admitted that this episode is one of the only regrets of his career. And you know what? I can see why. And that concludes our list, but please do let us know in the comments down below if you think we missed a really obvious one. What is your worst moment in modern Doctor Who? In the meantime, I've been Ellie for Who Culture, and in the words of Riversong herself, goodbye, sweeties.